Yeah, so welcome.
Hi, now it is. Sorry, I was not able to switch on my video. Now it works.
That's right. You've got to have your face and we've got to have the right background, Alessandro. You've got to make sure.
Yeah, I changed it on purpose, of course, yes.
Oh, that's good. That's good. It's good to see. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. A very busy one today, both in terms of numbers and in terms of audience. So delighted to welcome you all again here. I've noticed from the people that were Chile, from Boston and so on in from the first few people that joined that it's getting close to 50-50 I know and people that I don't know. I remember the good old days when I did know everybody. It's definitely proliferating now and people have been sharing it with friends and colleagues. So thank you and you're very welcome. For those particularly that are new to it, I just want to quickly explain what the Scope3 Peer Group is, because some of you will be wondering what this is all about. So a quick introduction to that, and then we have an absolutely jam-packed agenda. So we're going to be going very quick fire as we normally do through updates and initiatives and so on. So hang on to your hats and please do at any time put questions, comments into the chat, or do raise your virtual hand and we will get to you. So this is a meeting, not a webinar. So everyone's invited to take part. But do make sure you're on mute, of course. You can imagine all sorts of fun and games we've had in the last 3 years of people chiming in. So yeah, just be conscious of that. So what is the Scope3 Peer Group? I've been running collaborations and initiatives for 18 years in sustainable supply chains. And yeah, about 3 years ago, 10 companies in a meeting in London decided Scope3 was a big enough issue. And COVID hit, and lo and behold, 3 years later, we're nearly 1,000 people, invite only, that have been meeting for every 2 to 3 months, to go through the challenge of Scope3 and systematically track of what on earth is going on in the world in Scope3 and try to find ways and other places and initiatives and groups and projects that are relevant for us all and to keep track of all of that noise. It is also not only a group of people and brands, but it is also of initiatives. So anyone who's doing anything in Scope3 is welcome to be part of the peer group so that we can keep initiatives coordinated as well. It's funded by various grants and projects, and it's I'm delighted to be able to say it's not sponsored or no one has to pay to attend. Obviously, we do want you to add value. And as I said, hopefully it helps you all keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening. So what are we doing today? Now, for those that have been to meetings regularly, we do try to tackle a single big topic every meeting. Product carbon footprinting has been tackled before, but there's a lot happening and there's a lot happened very recently. So that is the primary focus of today's meeting. So we'll be tackling that. And as usual, we do have a quick fire update of projects and initiatives around the world on Scope3 as well. We're going to switch it around. We normally do the quick fire updates at the start. We're going to do them at the end now because we've got some people who really need to present and leave who very kindly lent their time to start with this. So as I said, everyone is to contribute. If you've got questions, put them in the chat. I will, maybe the speakers will answer them as we go, but if there's a very interesting question or more of a bigger question, I might ask you to actually voice that question, share it, and so on. However, if you've got comments and ideas and links, anything you want to add to the conversation, please do also put that in the chat. We want to be able to, everyone in this group, to be able to see what other people are thinking and doing and working on as well. So do add links and say hello and do whatever you want to do into the chat. It is very much a conversation as much as we can in the time that we've got. Okay, I think that's enough. So before we crack on with everything else, I'd just like to welcome Alessandro of BASF and also Together for Sustainability, one of the initiatives that's been part of the group from almost the very beginning in the chemicals industry. And they have been beavering away in their Scope3 work streams to produce some fantastic insight and guidelines. And I know a lot of us have been tracking, including this group has been tracking their progress quite a lot. So Alessandro, I know you need to be away, so I'm going to hand over to you and to take us through what you guys have been doing and the exciting update from you.
Well, first of all, thank you, Oliver, for the opportunity here to showcase what TFS has been doing in recent months. And obviously, I can only congratulate you on this amazing work. I mean, this amazing network that you are building. Definitely, you are one of the finest networker that I ever met so far. So at least on this topic.
I'm not any good at anything else, so thank you.
Anyway, thanks everybody for being here. I will be then now sharing my screen with a brief presentation, and then hopefully we'll have also some time for questions. And if there is still not enough time to address all your questions, we will still be able to do it offline or in other ways.
Thank you.
So I will share my screen now. Hopefully you see something soon in a larger format. Hope this is the case.
Yeah, we can see it just fine.
Okay, fantastic. So let's move on. First of all, whatever I will be showing has also more tangible documentation behind, and I think that you will share this slide later on, Oliver, or we made this available. So here you have all the links you can refer to later to deep dive in one or the other topics if you feel like. And I will first of all provide an introduction on Together for Sustainability to one of you who may still not know this initiative, and then provide a little bit some background why Together for Sustainability has started to dedicate itself or even a full work stream on Scope 3. The result is, spoiler, PCF guideline, which I will be briefly introducing, and provide also some outlook moving forward of what TFS is also doing in this field. First of all, what is Together for Sustainability? Together for Sustainability is an association of chemical, process industry, life science, plastics companies, 40 companies for the time being, with global participation already, we can say, spanning across all region. And it has been founded 10 years ago with a focus on sustainable procurement. And surprise, surprise, a couple of years ago, Together Sustainability realized that Scope 3 will be a key topic for sustainable procurement. Therefore, it decided to delve into this matter early on. And I will then get into the topic right now. Why all that? This slide is definitely, I think, very well comprehensible to a lot of you and most of you. The emission impact of a consumer product is becoming, and any product, to be very honest, is becoming a very relevant topic for regulators, for consumers, for companies in general, and it matters. Unfortunately, the emission impact of a product is not something that you can measure in the lab, in isolation. It's something that you can calculate based on data which are owned by other actors along the value chain. And any company somehow depends on its suppliers in that. No matter if at the end you want to determine the emission impact associated to the manufacturing of a car or a toothpaste or of a medicine or whatever product you may think of. This makes the things a little bit tricky. The tricky part is exactly measuring Scope 3 emissions at product level. Why is this tricky? Not only because things are kind of out of your hands sometimes, but also because, at least until recently, there were, yes, standards to calculate carbon footprints, but these standards were very generic and were not allowing to get this level of comparability of product carbon footprint, which is required to make a product carbon footprint a real KPI a purchasing decision can be based on. Now, for industry, the chemical industry, despite being very early in the value chain, and the Scope 3 is still very relevant with almost 80% relevance of the total carbon footprint of a average chemical product or plastics product or whatever. Therefore, the challenge of making Scope 3 measurable and comparable was taken up as a challenge or as a topic to deep dive in by Together for Sustainability. And the result, or one of the results that of the work of TFS on this topic has been the development of a industry-specific guideline, what we call the PCF guideline for the chemical industry, in order to make the determination of product carbon footprint less of an art and more of a science, and make product carbon footprint much better comparable across several companies when it comes to a chemical raw material. So the result was developing industry-specific drop-in solutions, so drop-in product carbon footprint guideline to make and to allow apple-to-apple comparison when it comes to product carbon footprint of chemical raw materials. Obviously, this has not been done by Together for Sustainability in isolation. We saw that nobody can approach this topic in isolation. And in fact, it was an ecosystem approach for day one, involving, besides the member company of Together for Sustainability, the 40 company mentioned, also some external company which are perhaps not necessarily member yet of Together for Sustainability, but they are suppliers of the chemical industry or relevant companies purchasing products from the chemical, plastics, or process industry. So 50 companies, large and small, have been collaborating in a pilot of the guideline, and obviously also other industries, especially cross-industry initiatives like the World Business Council for Sustainable Development with their PACT program, but also industry-specific initiatives like Catena X in the automotive space, and many consultants and certification companies have been involved in developing and testing such a guideline. Let's try to give a little bit more detail, well knowing that we'll not get in too great detail today, but let's try to give an idea of the structure of this TFS PCF guideline, which has been issued very recently. So it's a document, pretty sizable document that you can download freely out of the TFS webpage. The links were provided before. It consists of 5 chapters. The first 3 are an introduction and about principles. The 4th chapter is dedicated to a corporate level product carbon footprint when it comes to Scope 3.1. But I think the most relevant and the most sizable chapter of the document is the specification for product carbon footprint calculation. So the carbon footprint calculation at product level, which is chapter 5. It is sector specific at its besides giving all the information that are relevant for let's say an SCA practitioner to run an SCA and calculate the product carbon footprint for any chemical raw material. It's also an actionable guideline which can be implemented in digital tools, and it takes care also of very industry-specific aspects of the chemical industry, like multi-output process systems, special technology like carbon capturing and utilization, or carbon capturing and storage, and many other things. And some of the specific aspects of the chemical and plastics and process industry space are provided now a snapshot in the following slides, just to indicate what are the elements which are more specific for in the Together for Sustainability guideline. What's the reason why TFS spent so much time in developing this and launching this, while knowing that there was a greenhouse gas protocol available and also an ISO standard. Now, I assume that most of the people here know what a product carbon footprint is. So I will be very quick on this slide, just to have said at least once. Product carbon footprint is fundamentally a KPI measuring the climate change impact associated to the manufacturing and use potentially of a product. Now, it can be calculated as cradle to grave or cradle to gate, according to a cradle to grave or cradle to gate system boundaries. The guideline will follow, as a definition of the system boundaries, a cradle to gate approach, which is actually the approach which is mostly used and accepted in any manufacturing setting. The principle is that if every company would calculate diligently a cradle to gate product carbon footprint and pass on this information to its next value chain partner down to the final consumer product producer, you would be able to calculate to determine the product carbon footprint of any final consumer product in the end. Now, the guideline provides the basics, obviously, about what are the clear units, what is in scope and what is out of scope of a cradle to gate product carbon footprint. There is an emphasis on primary data, and let me give you a little bit more insight about this. Not because of a choice, but because of a necessity. Right now, most companies in any manufacturing industry still needs to rely on secondary data when it comes to scope 3 product carbon footprint information, simply because many or most companies are not capable to calculate product carbon footprint at scale or according to a clear standard. Therefore, for the time being, many companies are resorting to these secondary data banks. Now, this is a good point to start, but we all know that if we want to have product carbon footprint as an element to discern one supplier from another one and reward an innovator, you cannot follow this approach forever. So you definitely need to foster the calculation of primary data. And that's the emphasis of the guideline. And there are some, of course, explanation about what would be the validity period, should be not older than 5 years, should be updated according to a certain frequency, and respect certain cutoff criteria. But let's go into what is really specific of the chemical, process, and plastic industry space. One specificity is definitely the fact that chemical manufacturing has a lot of multi-atmospheric processes, which is perhaps in linear manufacturing less common, but in chemicals, that's rather the rule. Now, multi-output processes and the way this has been typically handled in generic guidelines or even in the ISO standards is too broad meshed, right? So you can follow ISO standard and calculate and allocate the emissions of a step of manufacturing across this multi-outputs or the several outputs, several co-products of that step of manufacturing in quite a big variety of ways, still claiming that you are following ISO or another standard, but still having totally different results. So it was definitely necessary to get much more prescriptive in handling multi-output process systems. And Together Feasibility has come up with a clear rule and a decision tree, which allows, if followed diligently, to have a much more comparable calculation of product carbon footprint of a chemical raw material. It will first try to see whether it's possible to avoid allocation. If not, it will provide priority to product category rule is available. And if not, it will provide a guideline whether to go for a physical type of allocation over an economical type of allocation. It will also delve into the specifics of special technology like CCU, hydrogen manufacturing, so carbon capture and utilization, carbon capture and storage, which are also very specific of the chemical space. Another area which is very relevant in the chemical industry and the process industry, plastic industry, is how to handle biogenic carbon. The guidelines provide indications how to take this into account, and prescribes to calculate the product carbon footprint of any product, both taking into account biogenic CO2 uptake and also excluding it, in order to provide also a figure which is also in line with the current version of the PEF guideline, for example, generic guideline. Another, I think, important chapter of the document is also the list of attributes which are reasonably important to be exchanged along with a number product carbon footprint among companies. Because honestly, a number or a product carbon footprint without context may be not so meaningful. Therefore, it's very important, especially if you want to make the exchange of data scalable and implemented in digital solution. It's important to provide structure with the type of data and metadata that are important to be exchanged alongside the product carbon footprint to make this number, provide this number a context, and allow for first level of validation and plausibilization of such a data. This is really a few snapshot of topics which are dealt with in the guideline. But let's try to give a little bit of an outlook, because Together Sustainability has not developed just this document, which, by the way, is not a static document. It will evolve with time. It's also starting to approach another important aspect, which is relevant to increase transparency in product carbon footprint determination in the chemical industry and in any industry, is how to make the sharing of product carbon footprint data scalable, and also this step standardized. And Together Sustainability is developing now a solution according to the principles of interoperability in the PAC program, and according to the principles of data ownership of the data provider and confidentiality, of course. This solution will enable supplier of the chemical industry, but also customers of the chemical industry, to ask and receive product carbon footprint information in a standardized way and in an efficient way, and perhaps also leveraging the value that Together Sustainability brings along auditing. Nothing that we can definitely deep dive today, but this slide is just to give you an indication that this is in the making. And in the second half of next year, we are confident that we will start to approach also external companies and value chain partners with such a solution, to hopefully contribute, provide our little contribution to achieving product carbon footprint transparency in the value chains which depend on the chemical space. That will be my last slide, but please allow me for a key message for this audience. Now you could say, okay, that's nice that there is this together for sustainability guideline, but how does it fit into the overarching context of industries? Now, the chemical and plastic and process industry have a very special position in the value chains. It is early on, not as early as the oil and gas, but still early on in the value chain, and it serves basically nearly all manufacturing value chains. McKinsey took some time to estimate that 95% of manufacturing goods rely on some form of chemical processing in one way or the other. You understand that based on data coming from chemical, plastic, and process industry producers, almost a huge number of downstream value chain needs to rely on such a data to determine the product carbon footprint of their own consumer or intermediate products. If you want to have any chance of a consistent approach and to avoid gaps in emission accountings at some level in the value chain, it's fundamental that an industry like a chemical, plastic, and process industry has come up with what we call it the drop-in sectoral guideline to provide clarity and standardization on carbon footprint of products which are used in such a variety of application. The idea would be that hopefully also perhaps other sectors, either connected downstream to the chemical and plastics and process industry sectors, or positioned very early in the value chain, like the chemical, plastic, and process industry sector, will do the same and connect to the potentially more specific sectoral guidelines of downstream industries. Following the generic alignment on standards like the ISO and the Greenhouse Gas Product Protocol, like advocated by the PACT program of WBCSD. The solution, the tool that now TFS has produced here is exactly a guideline which hopefully provides at least a solution of one piece of this big puzzle. So when it comes to a product carbon footprint of a chemical material, irrespective if it's used in a cosmetics or in an automotive part or in a packaging or whatever, it's calculated in a consistent standard, the TFS PCF guideline. That's the last slide for today and the last message. I'm very happy to take some questions if time allows. I will have perhaps some additional 5 minutes to dedicate to that, if you allow, Oliver, of course.
Well, no, if you're welcome to stay for a couple of minutes, that would be great. Your wonderful colleague, Catherine, has answered some questions in the chat for you. So thank you, Catherine. I really appreciate that. Alessandro, great. That's really wonderful to see the progress. My tiny brain is hurting, I have to say, getting my head around the technical nature of what you're doing. But I know how important it is to this. And there are many people on this call that are very thankful for what the chemicals industry is doing, given that you're such a key part to that. Some questions have been answered, but I do want to ask Stephanie. Are you there, Stephanie? Would you mind just voicing your question to Alessandro quickly? And I know there's a couple of questions in there, so maybe you can pick
just a few. So I'm chairing a working group seeking to do something very similar, but for a far lower carbon industry, which is TV and film. But TV and film really over-index on emissions, considering their kind of scale in the global economy. So I was really interested in the specifics of this and how you'd set it up, how you had found your third-party partners, how things were accredited, how much money you will put into it to ensure that you have that robust accreditation and kind of industry buy-in, and that other people have real confidence in the methodology and using it to share information up and down the value chain. And how you went out to kind of find those third parties. Was it people who were auditing your product already, or were you approaching kind of wider organizations to say, actually, we think you should have an involvement in helping us to develop this? And I'm aware that presumably cement and a bunch of other very high carbon industries are doing this stuff, and TV and film might be a bit further down the pecking order, but I want to do it right.
Well, thank you for the question. Obviously, we need to, as I said, it's nothing that you should do in isolation. We definitely have worked with a lot of our supplying partners, so supplier to the chemical industry. And we are now exposing the guideline to all the downstream industries as well, which are served by the chemical process and plastic industry. We have been, we are getting, as we speak, I don't know if you have got it, but I mean, I have no doubt that we will get it. Certification, an independent certification of alignment with the ISO standard and the greenhouse gas product protocol. Obviously, it has the ambition to be more prescriptive in some spaces. So it's obviously does not need to be, actually it's designed not to be the generic standard. Otherwise, it would have been, yeah, useless activity. But this alignment will be certified. It said it's going to be certified. I'm very confident that this will be certified because BASF was doing the same. We had our published guideline, which has been provided as an input in the Together for Sustainability guideline, and we got that seal already. So since there is a very strong relationship with two approaches, I don't expect any issue with that. Obviously, this solution and this guideline is very welcome from the industries and from our value chain partners. So many companies are really saying, "Great job! That's actually what we're waiting for." There is the interaction that we had with, for instance, the automotive industry and Catena X indicates that we managed to get a clear alignment as a drop-in solution in a relevant value chain. And the work that we are doing with the PACT program is also in that spirit. So that's we provided a solution. That's not an instrument of coercion, of course, but at the end of the day, it will be in interest of everybody to have such standards and to have standards and to not have conflicting standards. That's pretty much I would welcome that other sectors position same way as the chemical sector would do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully that was helpful. I didn't think chemicals and TV would be collaborating, but you never know. So Stephanie, I might connect you with Alessandro and colleagues afterwards so you can follow up. But I mean, a core part of Scope 3 peer group is trying to do is get industry Scope 3 work streams to all learn from each other because you have got lessons. So hopefully that can help. But thanks, Stephanie. Thanks,
yeah,
Alessandro.
that's great, and definitely driven by the same causes, same desire to collaborate up and down supply chains.
Exactly. Excellent. Well, thank you, Stephanie. Alessandro, really appreciate your time. I know you've got to shoot, but thank you ever so much. And if there are more questions, I'm sure I might be able to pick up some of them, but I'm sure we can connect you afterwards as well, if you wouldn't mind. But thank you again for joining us.
Thank you very much. And thanks also the colleagues in Together Sustainability, which are helping here in the chat.
One of the best collaborations there is, so I'm not surprised. There you go. Thank you, Alessandro. See you soon.
Bye-bye. Enjoy the rest of the meeting.
Excellent.
Bye, thank you.
So we have actually, you've probably heard a lot about the WBCSD's PACT program. We do actually have them next. So delighted to be joined by Laureate. I think they've set you up pretty well there, I think, for an introduction. So many of the group will know a bit about you, but now a lot more have heard about you. So it'd be great to hear an update about who you are and what you're working on. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Oliver. And yeah, thanks to Alessandro for the suspense and the drum roll essentially for PACT. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Laureate Simonek and I'm the Manager of Carbon Transparency at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, or also snappily known as WBCSD. Try and say that 10 times in a row. And so I lead our ecosystem pillar of the Partnership for Carbon Transparency, also known as PACT. So for those of you that have attended these Scope 3 peer group meetings before, you will have likely heard updates from on the project from our director, Anna Stanley, who's typically attended these. But for those of you who are not as familiar on PACT, I thought I'd just provide just a quick overview of what that is. So PACT seeks to tackle the Scope 3 emissions challenge by developing the global methodological infrastructure, so also known as our Pathfinder framework, and also the technological infrastructure, so that's also known as our Pathfinder network, needed for product level emissions data accounting and exchange, with the mission of empowering organisations to tackle and reduce the Scope 3 emissions challenge at the scale that is needed. So conveniently, at COP earlier this month, we launched our very short PACT overview video that I thought I would play for you all today, just before sharing some more detailed project-specific updates. So with technology permitting, I will just quickly share that for you all now.
Sounds good.
Can you all see it?
Yeah, it's coming up. You're going to play a video, aren't you?
Yeah, just a quick video. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, God loves a trier, so we'll give it a go.
oh, yeah, let's go for it. I suspect the sound might not work. That's
Can you
fine.
not hear it?
No, not normally, not unless we've set this up and prepared normally in advance. That's fine. Don't worry.
Okay, I mean, you get the gist, you can read it. It's exciting nonetheless. I'll also share a link in the chat following it also.
That'd be wonderful. I feel like you should commentate over the top, Lorraine. Or maybe I should shut up so people can watch it. That's probably better. Lovely. That's as quiet as this group has ever been, I think. But thank you. That was really good.
Yeah, it's impressive given that there's no audio either. So
It does the job, doesn't it? It's obviously good production, so you can read it.
that's right. I will share a video, the link to the video also, so you can listen to it with sound, although it's essentially just a person reading out the words that you read on the text anyway. But nevertheless, that is a brief overview of what PACT is. So essentially from now to the more specific project-specific updates since the last time we presented. So we've been consulting with our members on the second version of our methodological Pathfinder framework. So this is the guidance that ensures that standards such as the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, but also ISO are interoperable. And so the second version of the Pathfinder framework seeks to build on the first version in several key ways, including incorporating a hierarchy for the applications.
Sorry, keep going, don't worry. Just keep yourself. Carry on.
So it incorporates the hierarchy for the application of product category rules, so your PCRs, and also the quality safeguards for PCRs and secondary data sources. It also includes more specific carbon footprinting accounting guidance, so on exemption rules, allocation, but also critically biogenic emissions. And it includes data quality indicators and assurance and verification roadmap. And finally, when you question, could there possibly be more? There is. It also addresses the incorporation of PCFs into Scope 3 inventories. So our Pathfinder framework second version is being led by Cecilia Vivaleri and our team here. So I just want to acknowledge the work by her that's gone into this, but also all of our PACT members, which I imagine is quite a number of you that are on the call today. So in terms of our release timing, so we intend to publish the second version of our Pathfinder framework methodology early next year. So in Q1, it's looking more likely to be either the end of January or beginning of February. So just some post-Christmas excitement for you all to look forward to.
Can't wait.
Yeah. And so at COP earlier this month, we also announced a breakthrough in our value chain data exchange. So 7 global businesses successfully exchanged standardized data across technology solutions, which was very exciting. So spoiler alert, in addition to BASF, who just spoke, another one of the 7 businesses that participated in the pilot was Unilever. And they will speak after me to share their experience. So I won't spoil any further on that right now. And so we're also in the process of confirming our work program for next year. So PACT currently has a few deep dives, which sector or product or material specific applications of PACT, and they're currently focused on automotive, logistics, and sort of, as BASF just messaged, also the chemicals industry. So we're looking to also expand on these, and we're in the process of scoping one, and in particular one focused on agriculture, which will be quite timely given the fact that we're extending the methodology framework to biogenic emissions also. And so we've also, you may be knowledgeable of this, or they may be on the call, there's other organizations such as RMI who are also developing Scope 3 sort of deep dives in this space. So we've been meeting with them just to ensure that we don't, duplicate effort, but also complement one another in the sort of deep dives that we can provide in this space. So something to also look forward to for next year. And I guess the final key PACT update for next year, and is our key focus for next year, which is ensuring that PACT is easily usable and to scale its impact. So it's similar to what BASF said just before, also about scaling, but we mean that in the sense of not only working with our existing members of PACT to ensure that they're accurately and confidently using PACT, but also working with others to ensure that it's reaching as many of those in the supply chain to the extent possible. So PACT is only as useful as those that are also using it. So ensuring that we have a broad pool of people that are able to sort of use and exchange data in order to have that granular and exchange scale of impact to reduce our Scope 3. So that, I guess this is both an update for your information, but it's also a call to you all that if you're not currently a PACT member, you're not using PACT, what can we do to ensure that you are? And so that's something that I'd be very keen to sort of hear from you on, if you are on the call and interested in providing your feedback on that or engaging. And so with that said, I will also add my email address to the chat. So please contact me if you do want to discuss anything PACT related further. I see that someone has added also the video of PACT into the chat. So thank you very much for that. And what I'll also do is I'll add the link to our website, which I think also has the video on there, for you all to sort of engage with, and which has a number of resources on there, including the version 1 of our methodology, also our standardized technology information, and then also more information on our pilots that I just mentioned before that Unilever will speak to shortly. So yeah, that's our key PACT update. I do see that we've got some hands up. So Oliver, I'm not sure how you want to navigate this.
Well, I'll definitely let Jamie ask his question. I mean, there are going to be a few questions. So guys, maybe we won't have to cover them all, but please do put them in the chat because we can always pick them up afterwards with Laurette. But go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Laurette. That's great. I've been watching the work of PACT and also TFS for the whole time, basically. I work at SupplyShift, where a company helps companies, or a software company helps companies scale engagement with suppliers and data collection. And we've worked with companies to collect PCF data per the guidance of PACT. And companies clearly need scalable ways to do this. So this is great. What we find is that most suppliers haven't calculated their PCFs. So when a company goes out to its broad supply chain and says, give me your PCFs, we get a very small number back. We get some saying, we plan to do this in the future. And the ones who can provide it are the ones who are the most mature, who are usually on the path to reducing anyway. So for those who haven't done anything, there's really a need to combine that with a scalable way of helping those suppliers calculate their facility level scope 1 and 2 emissions, also understand their targets and progress. So really combining that kind of company level information with facility scope 1 and 2 and the request for PCF, because otherwise the company requesting all that data from suppliers doesn't get a lot of value, right? We need to focus on what's going to help the big company get from here to there. And it's a combination of all these things from different levels of maturity of suppliers that really makes it impactful. So I'm just wondering what you think about that, if that's something you're hearing also, and does your work plan to only focus on PCF or also kind of have a more holistic approach the way we've been addressing it?
Awesome, thank you. I think that's spot on. I think we're exactly seeing that also. And I think, so what we're doing, so PACT is one area or one initiative within WBCSD, within our climate imperative piece. So what we're doing is we're looking more broadly at sort of how do you wrap around that support around businesses to ensure that they're sort of accurately measuring and reporting on their emissions in order to sort of participate at that scope 3 level. So what we're doing as part of that is with the climate imperative team, or our SOS team within WBCSD, is looking at how do we develop that toolkit to sort of wrap around and support others that are more advanced in their climate journey, but also those that are less advanced, but also looking at smaller businesses that may not have the, the capital to invest in such a membership-based organization, or to have necessarily the experience to work with PACT. So one thing that we're also looking for at the moment is developing, that resource kit for possible members, but also looking at, we want PACT to be usable for as many people as possible. So that's external also to WBCSD members. So how do we ensure that, this has a far reach? So that's ensuring that we do have that support, as I just mentioned, that's not only just accessible to WBCSD members, but more broadly supporting those that are not, and throughout others as value chain. And I guess to your question about the focus sort of on the PCF or the carbon side of things, so that's something that we're looking into at the moment, is sort of what is another next step for PACT. And so at the moment it is very much focused on that product carbon footprint, but we're more broadly looking at possibly, what is the role of, product life cycle analysis and the role of PACT within that. So looking more broadly beyond carbon. And so that's something that we're also scoping at the moment, but it's sort of a chicken and egg situation, in that we want to ensure that PACT is sort of contributing and assisting and having as far a reach as possible beyond carbon, but also looking at the idea that we need to do PACT well also in the first instance to ensure that it is being easily used and adopted as well. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks very much. That's really good. And we should go straight on to Unilever, really, to sort of bring some life to that story as well. I think it's the next stage of that journey. Lorette, thank you so much for giving us an update. Lots of people have lots of questions, so do get in touch with Lorette. If you wouldn't mind putting your email in there, Lorette, you will get a few emails, I suspect, all for good reasons. So please do that.
Awesome.
Thank you. So Julia and Stella, or Stella, I'm not sure which one of you is at Unilever who will be sharing, but please do, if you want to step up and share with your latest of what you've been doing to bring this to life a little bit.
Thanks, Oliver. Yes, it's Julia and I doing a double act today. Hello, everyone.
Welcome.
And thank you for the opportunity to share with you all the work we've been doing over the past 6 months with some suppliers on Scope 3. Just a quick intro, and I think Julia's going to load up the slides. I'm Stella Constantatos. I work in Unilever's Business Operations Sustainability team. And Julia and I together, we focus on upstream Scope 3 climate. And yeah, we've put together a few slides to share with you one of the pilots we've run this year, working with a subset of suppliers on PCF data calculation and exchange. So following very nicely from the two topics we've just heard. I think before I get into it, just a little bit of context. Our ask to suppliers is threefold. The first is we want them to set a climate target that aligns with a 1.5 degree scenario, that aligns with a halving of emissions by 2030. The second ask is that they report on their progress to meet that target. And the third ask to suppliers is that they share with us the product carbon footprint data for the materials that they sell to us. And so this is our ask, but of course we know that, as we've just heard, most suppliers, many industries, this is a big ask. And so the work that we've done with a small group of suppliers this year has been about testing some tools to see, does this help? And what is a good way of working with suppliers before we move to scale from next year?
Excellent.
So a little bit more strategic context. And when I say suppliers, I don't mean all suppliers to Unilever, because we buy stuff and services from 56,000 suppliers globally. There's no ways we can, the two of us, Julia and I, can work with 56,000 suppliers. So what we did ahead of launching the program was a big materiality analysis to understand, well, with whom should we work for impact? Now, the pie chart that you see there is the scope of our net zero goal. So this is our sort of guiding ambition. It's net zero by 2039. And you can see in the pie chart, the raw materials, pack materials contribute the biggest proportion to that scope, to the scope of that goal. So it's over 60%. And so we then dug into the data of raw pack materials, footprint data and procurement data. And the good news was that it's 18 or so material groups and about 300 suppliers that are almost 2/3 of that upstream scope 3 impact. And this is our focus, this group of materials and suppliers. What have we done this year? We invited just over 60 suppliers to participate with us in a pilot, and recognizing that our suppliers are really at different stages of climate maturities, we organized the pilot into 3 groups. Category 1 are really the suppliers that have not really started, or they just started their climate journey, and the sort of capabilities are more basic. Category 2 are suppliers that tend to focus on their scope 1 and 2 emissions, so utilities operations. But the category 2, importantly, suppliers did not have capabilities to conduct a product carbon footprint. And then category 3, these are considered climate leaders. They tend to be companies with a science-based target and product carbon footprint capabilities, either in-house or they've outsourced it. And we essentially recognize that there's a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work with a heterogeneous group of suppliers like ours, and probably the same for everyone else in the call. So we tested effectively 3 different solutions or interventions with the 3 groups of suppliers and asked for their feedback. And what was, I think, a sort of, so I will go through, what the lessons learned were and so on, and what we did. But I think before going there, I think what we feel is kind of, we've started to build a community with the group of suppliers that participated in the pilot, and we get a real sense of collaboration and exchange with this group that we want to build on as we expand to up to 300 suppliers next year. With category 1 suppliers, the beginners, we leveraged the great materials from SME Climate Hub, I think with BSR and Cambridge University, and we made that available to this group of suppliers. With category 2, we paid for and offered access to a group of suppliers to something called EcoChain and Nexio Projects. It's a platform and a consultancy that helps to produce a product carbon footprint on a platform solution. And that followed quite an extensive market scan that we did to look for solutions that really we believe can help suppliers to do this in a more scalable way, maybe than a very traditional LCA. And then category 3, the leader suppliers, essentially we very much aligned with the WBCSD PACT methodology and framework and those sort of data attributes. And we created an Excel template where we asked the leader suppliers to capture their product carbon footprint data and parameterize it through those data attributes that was spoken about earlier, and effectively share that with us, and in the good old-fashioned way via email. We did also participate in WBCSD's data exchange pilot, but we're not covering that today. So that's essentially what we did, and I'm going to hand over to Julia now to talk you through our the outcomes and also then our lessons learned. Thank you.
Thanks, Stella. Hi, everyone. So I'm Julia, and I'm gonna guide you through the lessons learned from category 2 and category 3, because especially for these two categories, the focus was product carbon footprint, development, calculation, and then data sharing. In this table represents a summary of the work we've been doing. In total, we received product carbon footprint from 19 suppliers across the two categories, so category 2 and category 3, and that's 58 product carbon footprint, so the footprint of 58 materials or ingredients that we buy from these suppliers. And you can see here the split. 20 of these PCF have been calculated by category 2 suppliers, so with one tool, which is EcoChain, following the WBCSD PACT methodology that we asked EcoChain to embed in their calculations, while 38 PCF have been received from the suppliers, and they've been calculated with their own tools, their own methodologies. So to them, to category 3, we just asked them to share whatever data they had already calculated. And then once we got all this data, we did an in-depth data quality analysis, because we wanted to understand how's the quality of this data and can we potentially, eventually, use them and integrate them into Unilever carbon footprint calculation. At the end, 70%, 69% of these data were considered of good quality, meaning they align the way they were calculated and the result and the data qualifiers that they shared with us were acceptable and in line with the WBCSD PACT methodology. 15 were not acceptable, and 3 we are unsure because we some details were missing or some answers were not clear. So after all, 70% we consider it to be a good number for the kind of exercise that we did and for being the first time we ran such an exercise. And then we did a further level of analysis of these numbers to understand when we will be accepting PCF data from suppliers. How will our numbers change in terms of when we compare this PCF with current emission factor we use? And we saw that 16%, that it's basically a mix of answers. 16% were aligned, so within a range of plus or minus 15% of current emission factor. 33% were significantly lower and 21% significantly higher. This means that getting supplier specific emission factor PCF data doesn't necessarily mean that we're gonna decrease our footprint. It's just we're gonna get a more accurate footprint. What we learned, if we look at the category 2, so starting from the bottom, suppliers recognize this exercise, so of starting to build PCF expert capability as a valuable learning exercise. It was gave them the possibility to deep dive in their processes, to understand the complexity of their processes, of their product, of their value chain, and also to engage with their respective suppliers. Very challenging data collection process, sometimes because of lack of visibility, lack of data, or lack of resources to find all this data. They also shared with us that they are receiving more and more questions for PCF data from multiple customers. So Unilever is not the only one. Therefore, they are investigating into more platform to calculate PCF data beyond the offer that was done from Unilever. And then when we look at category 3, so the leader suppliers, the challenge for us was data quality, so assessing the data quality and going through the validation. Another challenge is the methodology variability. So whenever we did not kind of mandate a methodology, we received data calculated with multiple methodologies, so what was addressed earlier today. And the fact that obviously Excel and email is not the most efficient way to exchange data. So this is what we learned. This is all the feedback we heard from suppliers. And therefore, I'm going to close with what did we learn? What are our key learnings, and how are we taking these learnings and focusing our next steps? The key learnings from the pilot in general is that the participation to the pilot correlates with suppliers' maturity. The more mature, the more they're willing to participate, they're willing to have a chat, share data, and so on. When calculating PCF, methodology and scope variability is a challenge, so we need for standardization, and TFS was a clear example of this need. Data validation and assurance is a challenge as well. And then at the end, what I shared already, we need a more efficient way of exchanging data beyond Excel. So what are we doing next? First of all, we want to scale up. We want to take the learnings and scale up. Therefore, next year, we're planning to scale up to the top 300 suppliers that Stella mentioned to be the most materials for us. And then for PCF, we understood we clearly need to move beyond bespoke company solution. We need to standardize and find and align cross-industry. And that's why we're really endorsing the work done with WBCSD, PACT. And as Stella shared, we have been part of piloting the whole data exchange with a few of our suppliers. And then key point, PCF data is just the first step. We get data, but then we need to take action based on this data. So the focus this year was getting data, visibility, transparency, and tools. But from next year on this, we will add, obviously, a focus on reduction actions to reach, to meet the targets. So that's it on our side. Happy to take any questions.
Well, Stella's been on it. She's been answering all the questions for you, Julia. She's been fantastic. So this is the benefit of a double act, you see. So that's wonderful. Just huge thanks. I'm conscious we haven't got a huge amount of time, but the questions have been flowing here. And please do, both of you, have a look at the chat and answer the questions. I suspect we're going to need another session with you and perhaps the rest of the consumer goods community in the new year anyway. So we'll have a bit of a deep dive on this, but thank you for sharing the very specific lessons and learnings. I can feel solution providers that offer platforms all over the world getting excited about your findings and saying, at last, everyone's listening, we are needed. You can't just use Excel. So yeah, that's inevitable, but it is very, very important. I think the other overarching question, obviously everyone's, and it's been mentioned in the chat, is all of the sessions today have been talking about measurement, product carbon footprinting and analysis and all that. We need to drive action, don't we? And taking action on PCF data is arguably even more important than getting it itself. So I think we will see a lot more action on that. I know that's been a big theme of the Scope 3 Big, and you Unilever do supplier collaboration better than most. I'm sure you're already onto that piece as well. But Julia, Stella, thank you so much. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I think that tied the presentations together nicely. It was almost like it was designed that way. You never know. Julia, thank you. Stella, thank you. So now into our quickfire updates. So we've got about 4 or 5 updates in the next 25 minutes. So we're going to rattle through these, not necessarily on product carbon footprints, but on wider initiatives and wider things that are going on. First up, one of the most, and I would say this because very much involved in it, but one of the most exciting initiatives that I think the group's been involved in for some time. A lot of you have even know about this already, but over the last feels like the last year, really, but certainly in the last 6 months, the group has been working together. Over 50 of you very kindly has been working together to systematically understand how well you're all doing on Scope 3 and really deeply understand practically how you compare with each other. Is what Unilever's just shared similar to others' experiences in the group? Have others attempted that? This is the sort of information we'd like to know. So over to my good friend and colleague Jamie to take us a bit of an update on the Scope 3 peer group maturity benchmark. There you go.
Sorry, just unmuting. Right, thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you. So back in October, we gave a quick overview, presented the last Scope 3 peer group and talked to everybody about our benchmark. So just wanted to say a massive thank you to everybody that has participated so far. We've had a really good reaction to the benchmark and had plenty of participation so far in our first phase. As Oliver said, we've sent it out to about 50 organizations, and now throughout November, we've called time on the 18th. Now, since the 18th, we've been pulling together our baseline data set, and that has now started to get analysed and pulling all our data together. So in December, what we've now been doing is pulling together what the report's going to look like. So what we want to try and do is give everybody an individual report that gives them some insights against how they're performing versus the wider group. And that is hopefully going to start going out over the course of the next few days. So we've now developed a really nice tool for sharing the insights with each individual organization. And that's going to give you insights across all of the different aspects of the framework. So what I would say is that so on Friday, we're going to send out the next phase release. So if you haven't already registered your interest in participating, please do. I will post in the link to the registration form in the chat. We can now accept more people, and what we want to do is build out the data set and make it wider and bigger and more insightful. The idea behind it being is once we get to January is we'd like to come back and actually share some real insights from what we've learned and what we can share back with the group, but also then start to think about how we provide insights at more of an industry level. So once we get a certain amount of industry participation, we hopefully be able to give some comparisons to how different industries are looking. So I'll just give you some very quick indicative results, and just so you can kind of get a feel for what we're trying to produce. Now, as we said before, there's going to be a mix of qualitative and quantitative data. On the qualitative, what we've done is pull together the overall scores for all organizations, and now what we're doing is providing some visibility back across each of the different 7 pillars of the framework. So strategy, organization, people, process, etc., as you can see, and showing how each organization compares versus the median and also versus the leading organizations. Now, what I would say is that obviously we've had good participation so far, but in order for us to be able to help people to see how far others are going and what the leading organizations are doing, even if you consider yourself to be at the very far end of the maturity curve, I'd still encourage you to take the survey, because what that's going to do is help provide a richer data set for others to compare against. And this is actually really important when we look at some of the quantitative elements, which I'll show you in a second, because those are the bits that I think are going to help answer some of the questions that we were trying to from the outset. When we present back the results, we'll give you some views about where you sit relative to each organization on this framework. Also, another bit of interesting insight was how we've asked people to rank the importance. So what is most important to you on different elements of the framework? And what was very interesting was how that has come out, because strategy was actually at the top end organization as well. And actually, I think I've got this the wrong way around. Yeah, the most important actually came out being performance management.
That's right.
and strategy being the least. And what I found interesting with that was, I think it's a mindset that people have taken, because people often start with strategy. Actually, now this is one of the areas where they're least looking to make change. But again, hopefully some of these insights will come through in the report. On the quantitative ratios, this is again where I need a bit more insights from others who are further on the maturity scale, because certainly the Scope 3 budget has come in as being quite low, and on the average headcount as well. So what we're trying to be able to do, what I'd love to be able to do, is to help organisations to sort of scale up how many people they should have within their organisation, because this was one of the burning questions that was coming through in the beginning. So last bit. So just a few FAQs quickly, some other bits and pieces, some learnings from the last few weeks of running through the process. Just to reiterate, it is a free exercise. We're not charging anybody at this stage for any of the insights or any of the work that we're doing to be able to pull the benchmark together. We are completely anonymizing all the data. It's only being personal data is only being used in order to be able to communicate back with you or your individual results. As I said, we're going to use the data to provide insights back to this group and back to the individuals who are concerned. So there's no sharing of that any further. It will take about 45 minutes, I think, for you to complete it. It is a comprehensive piece of work. It's a comprehensive survey. There's 27 different elements to look at, and on varying assessments of the scale of maturity. A number of people have asked if we can share an offline copy. I can't share that. I can share with you in advance what the quantitative metrics are, which may help to be able to go and gather the data up ahead of time. We are looking to have one completed survey, ideally by each individual organisation. We might be able to look in future at expanding that, or giving you a kind of a more rounded view within your organisation. But what we'd like is just a single submitted survey per company. And then, yeah, hopefully once we've run through this round in early Q1 of next year, we'll present the results back and present some feedback to everybody, and then but yeah, looking to hopefully update it as we go year on year, see how people are moving along the maturity curve over time.
Excellent. Great work. And just to reiterate, thank you hugely to there's so many of you that have been participating in this program. If we could get, and bear in mind there are 1,000 people in this group, if we were to get a benchmark across that group, would also help the collaborative groups like TFS and any other industry group that would like to do this benchmark with us, and in a consistent way. It should be fascinating to do. So do get in touch. So bear with us, because it is a work in progress, the benchmark itself, but also the huge effort that the team are putting into providing results. So, and yes, the intention is ultimately to be able to segment the data in a number of different ways. I am brutally aware that we're running out of time, and we have lots more people to present. So first of all, sorry to those that are presenting, because we haven't got much time, but do carry on. And we will maybe run over a little bit, and the recording obviously can continue. So I think we should go to Rap next. Rap, if you wouldn't mind giving us a very brief update. And of course, I suspect we'll plan to deep dive with you in the new year as well. So over to you. Thanks, Stephen.
Apologies, everyone. Just unmuting there. So hopefully you can all see slides. Yep. So no, this is the wrong.
Looks very interesting though, Steve.
Yes, that is not the right one. Right. Okay, we are having issues here. No, that's still the wrong one. I don't understand how that's happening.
Oh, that looks
right. I will just give a quick update. We are having a so you should be able to see the slides for the Scope 3 peer group now. Right, okay, we're working. We're working. Right, okay. Thank you, everybody. Apologies for that. So a quick update from RAP on the work that we are doing. Just in case any of you aren't aware, the general context to all of this is that RAP runs a voluntary agreement with the UK food sector that has 3 sustainability targets, one of which is quite a significant reduction in the greenhouse gases, total greenhouse gases from the sector by 2030 as a short-term, near-term target, in line with science-based targets and that kind of trajectory. So as part of that, there was then a working group established with 100 actors or so actors involved at the moment across the food sector in the UK, kind of spanning the various range of stakeholders that you would like to be involved in looking at that issue. And as part of that, we kind of received a mandate from UK government and that group to try and go ahead and do a bit of an exercise like Alessandro was talking about before, looking at the international standards around Scope 3 reporting and effectively trying to interpret those and make those specific from the food business perspective and try and make some specific recommendations and you know, curate the resources that are available to the food sector on this. We published those, version 1 of those in May 2022, which consisted of a suite of resources, including the kind of large document of the protocol and some pilot questionnaires for suppliers on key product types from the UK perspective, and a bit of a consolidation of a database of various emission factors that are available for food products in the public domain. Obviously, there's a huge amount of information available behind paywalls on that front as well. And we have been piloting over the last few months since that launch with 17 companies in the food sector, kind of spanning retailers and hospitality and food processors and some who are producing food as well. I think it's fair to say there's lots and lots of detail that have come in from those pilot sessions, but just as a brief overview for this group, it's quite clear, and I think this speaks to some of the other things that are going on, that some of these kind of guidance and protocols are very accessible and kind of useful for the businesses that are really putting a lot of resources to this, and then it all becomes a little bit less accessible and less useful for others who are really trying to get their head around this, even though we obviously, you know, effectively tried to design that document as a consolidation. So we'll be taking various things from that pilot in the generic sense about producing different types of materials that can try and break down some of those barriers and effectively tease this out more for businesses that are really trying to get their head around it and, you know, maybe at earlier stages on that maturity benchmark that was just mentioned previously. So our timeline for that at the moment, we are kind of in about just over halfway through that, and we'd be looking to finish up this pilot by the end of the financial year and be kind of releasing version 2 of those protocols in the next UK financial year, so after April 2023. We've obviously got quite a lot of updates to various international documents, including the GHG Protocol Land Sector and Removals Guidance and the Science Based Targets Flag Guidance to reflect on and update and integrate into the new guidelines that we produce. So hopefully that's a rapid fire update through that. Brilliant. And I'm aware you're very short on time, Oliver, so I'll stop there.
That was really good, Stephen. Thank you. I really appreciate you putting that effort into chat. Sure, you'll be presumably willing to share those slides and we'll share them with the group afterwards. If anyone has got any questions for Stephen, do put them in the chat now. Maybe Stephen, you could have a look at them in a few minutes. But also, Stephen, you wouldn't mind putting your email address in there, because I know we've got a few people that were in the food and drink industry. We'd love to, no doubt, find out more and lessons for other people as well. But thank you for your update.
Of course, thank you.
No problem. Right, Miguel, I'm going to come to you, and Johan, I'll come to you very soon after that. And I promise you'll go first at the update next to meeting, I promise. But Miguel, do you want to go next?
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'll just share. It's only a couple of slides here. All right. So hi, everyone. Great to speak to you all again. So just a quick reminder, right? So last session, we quickly ran this poll that you can see here on the screen, sharing or asking people like, what are the key insights that you all need to be able to progress in your ability to use technology for Scope 3 emissions, and particularly we're focusing on supply chain emissions, right? So everything that's happening in the upstream supply chain. So you can see some of the things that came up in that survey. at the very the most interest was around the different types of tools, but also you want to know who's using who, et cetera, right? So Oliver and I, and with the input of some of my colleagues at Gartner, we started developing this survey that, or like putting together some of the key questions that we needed to come to be able to provide some of these insights to everybody here, right? So just wanted to give you like a quick update on that's the reason why we're doing this. The next steps is we're hoping that Oliver, maybe in the next message out to the group by the end of next week, you should be able to send the survey link. We're going to be reviewing all of this information between Oliver and myself, and then obviously some of these results will be shared in the next meeting in January. So that's it from me.
Excellent, excellent. And it's safe to say that one of the biggest challenges of the peer group over many years has been navigating the noisy market of tools and platforms. And as Unilever have highlighted, we are marching triumphantly towards the need for everyone to really have one and have a good one that's using the right standards from WBCSD and everything else. So Miguel and I are delighted to be working on this. So we'd need your input. We'd love to make sure that we're asking the right questions. So we think we are. But yeah, if you're interested in the outputs or get in touch with us and you can help us guide us. But the survey will be coming out soon. So tell us what you need. Also tell us what you found. I'm sure many of you almost have seen as many demos as I have and are probably just as bewildered by it all. But hopefully, as I said, that'll be really, really useful. A good use of the Scope 3 peer group, hopefully, again, as well. So last and not least, and 8 minutes, not bad. Johan, over to you, please.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. I'll put you on the spotlight. There we go.
Okay, let's see if I can share the screen. Can you see my screen?
We can.
Okay, so this is a quick one since it's the last presentation. So I'm heading up the Exponential Roadmap Initiative. I'll just give you a few highlights from our latest COP seminar. The key opportunity, as far as we see it, is if we can get as many as possible on the same pace, aligned with science, which is basically halving emissions by 2030, then we can actually succeed. But we need to get as many as possible and as many supply chains as possible on the same pace, as far as we see it. A few words on the Exponential Roadmap Initiative, who we are. We bring together transformers, disruptors, taking action in line with the 1.5 ambition, with a mission to halve emissions by 2030 through exponential climate action and solutions. And we're one of the accredited Race to Zero initiatives, and bring together some leading companies, as you can see, but also some smaller companies. We're working closely with science organizations like Potsdam Institute for Climate Research in Oxford and so on. All our members are aligned with the Business Playbook, which is an open resource. You can download that if you like, which is basically applying the 4 climate pillar framework, which is about reducing your own emissions, which is Scope 1 and 2, your value chain emissions, Scope 3, upstream and downstream. So very much relating to this seminar, but also accelerating climate solutions and contributing to climate action in societies. You can download this resource. But in specifically, we co-founded this initiative called the Supply Chain Leaders with a number of companies and expanded. We also done this together with, as you can see, a number of partners like Race to Zero, Women Business, BSR, Climate Group, so on. And see here. Okay, so what this group, can you hear me, Steve? Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you, Jan.
Okay.
I'll put the link to the engagement guide in the chat for everybody.
Okay, yeah, that's fantastic. Yes. So what we do in this group, and I represent the companies there, so not talking for myself. Well, encourage all our key suppliers, as you heard from Unilever, to halve their greenhouse emissions by 2030 towards net zero, of course, and integrating climate-related performance into our procurement processes. And what is really important, try to sort of develop and share best practices openly to anyone. So for example, we built the supplier engagement guide together with BSR, which includes a number of templates, examples, which other companies can replicate. That's the thinking, and the idea is to further develop that next year. And also we're part of the SME Climate Hub, which we co-founded together with Women Business and ICC 2 years ago, which provides a great resource for large corporations to basically ask their long tail of small suppliers to join this initiative to be able to take climate action. And we're also introducing a simplified reporting. The SME Climate Hub includes a number of tools, as you know, but also simplified reporting shortly, which is developed together with CDP. So small companies can report and the large corporations can access that data to understand their performance. So we think that is quite exciting. Yes, indeed. I'm going the wrong direction, I can see here. Not sure why. Okay. We think that, well, some of these leading companies have a particular responsibility to show that it's achievable to actually halve emissions through the supply chain and go in the front line and influence others. And only these companies can, of course, influence millions of suppliers. And we want to make this the business as usual to get as many companies' supply chains on track as possible. And okay, what we're looking for at 2023, which we like to discuss with all of you, but basically to drive this initiative is how we can spread this ask exponentially to get as many actors as possible on the same compass direction, because we can only succeed if we start to go on the same pace. It's about halving by 2030, and we need these simplistic science-aligned targets, as we heard from Unilever as well. Make it the new normal. And how we can contribute is, of course, show how it can be done, sharp and simple, but also accelerate the ask to our small suppliers, which is also important. We can't leave the small suppliers behind. We need to support them as well through the SME Climate Hub and continue to develop this open pool of resources. And as we talked about before, encourage and facilitate for increased transparency of commitments, data, challenges, of course. So that gives a little bit idea what we really like to work on next year, and doing that in collaboration, of course. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah,
really appreciate that. And just again to reiterate, the supplier engagement guide as an example is phenomenally good tools. There's literal supplier engagement template letters that you can download and use. It is a fantastic resource, and well done to everyone that's involved in that, Johan. You're doing a great job, without doubt. A minute left. I have no idea how we managed that, everybody, how we managed to squeeze all of that in with a minute left. Huge thanks to all of you for taking part and for all of your questions. Loads of stuff in the chat there. Hopefully that's all been useful. Slides, recordings will all be shared, and we'll all be back again in the new year. And I hope you have a wonderful holidays and Christmas and everything else. Do take a look at the benchmark. Do take a look at the survey on Scope 3 tools. And I'll hopefully see you all again on the other side. Thanks a lot. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Johan.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.